Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. Thank you for being here. I hope you are doing well. In today's video, we'll have a very casual conversation. I'd like to tell you a little story of what life was like in the Philippines back in the days. How Filipinos find entertainment and leisure, especially during that era where a lot of Filipinos did not have any electricity. I was raised in that era. A lot of people probably remember that as boring, a lot of things going on because there's no electricity. But in my memory, it's actually a very, very fond memory. I love those times. A lot of Filipinos can probably relate. Nostalgic. All right. Okay. When people ask me, where is your hometown? I get confused how to answer this question because my family moved a lot. I was born in Manila, so I guess I can consider myself as a Manileño. But I also lived in Bohol and then lived there for several years as a child, moved back to Manila, lived in Bulacan. I think my family at one point also lived in Nubaliches, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, we moved a lot. And then I spent most of my young adolescent life, as adult life, in the Bicol region. My heart will always be a Sorsoganon because that's where I made a lot of friends. My father's family was from there. He was born and raised there. I just have a lot of connection with Sorsogon. That's my home province. Actually, when people ask me where you are from, I always say I am from the Bicol region because that's where I pretty much grew up. I moved there when I was in 5th grade, and that's all I remember really. Most of my good memories are in Bicol region. Love the place, love the people. I have so many relatives there. That's probably one reason why that's really where my heart is in the Philippines. It's in Sorsogon. All right, so let's talk about entertainment because I have so many good memories of this. Now, as I mentioned, I was raised in an era where a lot of places that I lived in, my family lived in, did not have any electricity. So when we lived in Bohol, I remember for a couple of years we did not have any electricity, and so as my neighbors. So most of us relied on those lamparas. This is like a lighting powered by kerosene. I'm gonna try to put a picture. So a lot of people went to bed early. There's really no entertainment at night unless there is a full moon. This is when everybody went out to play. The kids were playing because it's bright. And then the adults kind of hang out, sing a song. Some people would have, be playing guitar. Some would be doing a little bit taga, drinking a little bit. But the kids are out playing. We stayed for a couple of hours, during the full moon days of the month. But other than that, not much going on. People went to bed early. It was so quiet. 6 p.m. when you hear that campana, campanario, the church bell, everybody went home. A lot of people prayed. A lot of people are Catholic, so they had their prayer session. Usually 30 minutes to an hour, they would pray in front of the altar, and then after that, people had dinner, went to bed. That's pretty much it. That was the routine. And then electricity came, and people started getting electricity. But even with electricity, most people just had light bulbs in their house. In my house, I remember we had 2 light bulbs. That's it. We did not have any television. We finally got an electric radio, but for the longest time, most people relied on those battery-operated radios. And when we moved to Bicol, I would say this, that the infrastructure there was so much better. A lot of places have electricity, and actually a good number of my neighbors had televisions. So televisions became kind of a thing. People started wanting to have one, but for the longest time we did not have one, but our neighbor had. And if you happen to be that neighbor with a television, you kind of just, whether you like it or not, you ended up hosting a lot of neighbors. They just showed up, to watch TV with you. That's how it was like. And so you become very good friends with your neighbors, or even if you don't have a choice, they just showed up. They're like, oh, we're here to watch TV with you. People were close anyways. Actually, the neighbor we had were very good friends with my family, so it was kind of normal. The kids watch cartoons. The parents usually did not watch the TV after the news. They just kind of hang out and talked. So I recall that kids started staying up a little bit later, maybe like 8 on a Friday night, maybe at 9, because we had shows that we watched, mostly just kid shows, like cartoons and stuff. Some family kind of oriented. A lot of the shows back then were very family oriented. You would rarely see anything. Like you could leave the kids watching TV and you don't have to worry about anything. Commercials were very regulated. It's a little different nowadays, but back in the days, no problem. Now I remember this. One very good fond is the word memory I had growing up is that on my way to school, and this is in the Bicol region, on my way to school, you will see a lot of these rice fields. And a lot of these people working in the rice fields, usually during the, rice planting season, they brought with them these battery operated radios. And you would hear the music playing. It is either an OPM, original Filipino music. And if you are a Filipino, you probably know this. Bands like Asin was very, very popular back in the day. My dad loved that band. That song, Himig ng Pag-ibig, was like one of the most popular songs in the Philippines, even up to these days. And it starts with a humming like, just all humming at the beginning. But it's actually like a love story type of music. So people loved it. And then, of course, the old songs, the old bands. Well, we consider old, but I still love listening to them. In fact, I'd like to mention this. Music back in the days was so much better. Just so much better. From the music, the lyrics. It's just so much better. It feels like people back then actually thought about the music they made compared to now. It's all just rhythm and it's nothing, the same, the same type of lyrics. It's just sad. It's so different now. Frank Sinatra was very popular back in the days, but my favorite, you probably know them if you do, the Carpenters, were very popular. Now when I was a teenager, the FM radio stations became a big deal. Before that, we only had the AM. And as an elementary student, high school student, I was so in touch. What is that the word? I was so pretty much, into current affairs. The news, the politics, because my dad listened to the AM radio stations and radio stations like DZRH. Now, if you're a Filipino, you know this. Joe Tarok was like the guy, the broadcaster that we always listened to. I listened to that guy so much. It's like... that voice is like ingrained in my head. DZMM was also very popular. My dad loved the news, loved politics, so we listened to that pretty much every single day on the dot. And then FM radio stations became a deal. A lot of teenagers listened to this. And then several years later, telephones became a thing. So now you can actually, I'm talking about landlines, okay? Now you can actually call in to the FM radio station and put in a request. Some people even, I remember, put in like messages for their crushes. They had a boyfriend or a girlfriend. You can dedicate a song for them. It was nice. I remember one song was always playing on the FM radio station. That the Carpenter song, Close to You, was so popular. I don't know if you know what I'm talking about. That song like, why do birds suddenly appear? That was always playing on that radio station because someone was always requesting it. So those are so much fun of a memory. Now, I remember one neighbor decided, actually a very, very intelligent neighbor. They were the first one to buy a big television. Now, the televisions that I'm talking about back in the days, 1980s, 1990s in the Philippines, they were like heavy TV, like thick on the back. Like it was like, you cannot like lift it out yourself. These TVs are, you could probably do if you're a man, but these TVs are so heavy and so hard to move, but those were, the TVs. Now this neighbor was the first one to buy a very big TV, but they were very business minded, business oriented. So they decided to kind of set up kind of a theater at the back of their house. They built this space. They basically had a theater, okay, with a television, a bigger television than most people have in their homes. So on Friday nights, it's only Friday nights, they would have movies. And back in the days, movies were played in the Philippines. So during that time, they used BHS. BHS, those, they're like a rectangular tape. And so those BHS rental stores became very popular as well. Now in the Philippines, if you start a business and it becomes a hit, everybody starts copying you. So, of course, this neighbor started having competitions, but they actually did pretty well because they've added businesses, small little kind of side hustles on top of that little business they had. They started their own little snack bar, I guess. they had a sari sari store where you could start ordering chips and drinks, while you're watching this movie. So me and my sister, that was our bonding time with our father. Every other Friday we would go and watch a bandam martial arts type of movie. I think there was one that I recall. Was it The Soldier? That was very popular. And then, of course, Bruce Lee, Jackie Chan, Jet Li. Those are the movies we watch. And then our real introduction to American movie was when we watched Conan. Arnold Schwarzenegger. Of course, they show that movie so many times that it was just, well, it was a good movie anyway. So we went there every other Friday with our father. So that was a very good memory for me as a teenager. Now, once this neighbor started having competitions, now we had options, because some neighbors also started focusing more on showing just the Filipino type of movies. And then we actually, at one point, we had a bigger TV. We started doing it, but we were showing like Christian movies. Like I remember The Born in Hell was quite popular. A lot of people watched the movies, and it was a good business for a short period of time, maybe a couple of years. But then after that, most people can now afford TV, so they don't really have to go. Of course, the era of theater became a thing. I think, theater, that kind of business still does very well in the Philippines. Of course, here in the US, it's dead now. But yeah, that's how Filipinos entertain themselves. It started with, we went out on a full moon to electricity came. And so now we have electrical radios to televisions. Of course, let's not forget the sound systems. That's when things got really, really loud and noisy, because that's when people started having their own sound systems. Filipinos love singing, so a lot of people have their own, videoke setup. So some people have videoke machines. In my household, it was also very loud because my father loves to sing. He had this sound system set up, so even if he's not singing, he's listening to something. Some of the songs he listened to, that was kind of ingrained in my head. Of course, he listened to a lot of Christian, music, but he's got some vices too. He loved to listen to the Scorpions. He loved that band. That was kind of his, I guess he said during his teenage years, that's the band that he listened to. So I know most of their songs. Very good band, actually. As I mentioned, music back in the day was so much better. At least in my personal opinion. All right, so that's how it started. And then everybody started having their own setup at home. Nobody really, I think the introduction of just technology in general, at least in my opinion, kind of separated people. Back in the day, when there was very little entertainment, people actually took the time to went to the neighbor's house, had a conversation, or when there was very little option, people actually showed up in the neighbors to kind of watch TV with them, because maybe they didn't have a television at home. But once everybody have their own setup, people just stayed in their homes, never really saw the neighbors anymore. It's kind of sad. Nowadays, there's no such thing. Now, I guess it still depends. I'm sure that there's still places in the Philippines that's still very, very remote, and some of these places probably still don't have electricity. But in the Bicol region, at least, when I left, everybody already have their own thing, But for me, those are very good memories to remember. I don't know what it's like here in the US back in the days, but for those of you who kind of got a little taste of that, the very little to no technology, what was it like for you entertainment wise? Did you listen to the FM radio stations? Is that what you call it here in the US? Because nowadays, I don't know if there's still FM radio stations. I know in the Philippines there is still some type of that. I remember watching, I think last year, I saw something about the Wish Bus. It's very Wish Bus. It's very popular in the Philippines, but this is like a bus that actually hosts like live singers, Yes, that is the memory that I remember of what Philippines was like back in the days when there was very little entertainment. The introduction of electricity and how people entertained themselves and find leisure. It was very different. It was a very different world, but that was actually not bad at all. All right, let's end this conversation here. If you have any story of what it's like in your day, you can always share that in my comment section below. Thank you for watching. See you on my next casual conversation. Bye, everyone.